थैंक यू क्रैक, थैंक यू वेरी मच। सो कोचेस, मेरा ये वीडियो दिखाने का एक एम था कि कैसे हाई परफॉर्मेंस सेंटर में आपने देखा साइकोलॉजिस्ट, न्यूट्रिशनिस्ट, स्ट्रेंथ एंड कंडीशनिंग, फिटनेस, सब एक जगह इन्वॉल्व है, और ये पूरी की पूरी टीम एक साथ मिलके एक एथलीट के पीछे काम कर रही है उसकी हाई परफॉर्मेंस अचीव करने के लिए। सो क्रैक जो है इस सेंटर के डायरेक्टर हैं, वो आज हमारे सामने लेके आए हैं लॉन्ग टर्म एथलीट डेवलपमेंट। इन्होंने इस टॉपिक पे रिसर्च किया है, बहुत अच्छे हमारे सामने आज इस चीज को रखने जा रहे हैं। सो ऑफिशियली फ्रॉम द स्पोर्ट्स अथॉरिटी ऑफ इंडिया, आई वेलकम क्रैक on behalf of Sports Authority of India, and now officially you can carry your presentation. Thank you, Craig.
Hi, Manoj. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm talking from South Africa, Johannesburg. I know we're thousands of kilometers away and we're in a tough situation at the moment during lockdown. And I've personally been in lockdown for more than 40 days. I've been just telling Manoj that. And my last place was actually in India. I was with the South African cricket team and we had to postpone our series in India to come back safely home. And I mean, we couldn't thank the Indian government and the BCCI a lot more. I mean, you know, they did a lot to get us back home safely, and everyone's safe and all the players are safe, and we're in good health at the moment. So good health to be here and speak to everyone about my passion. I'm hugely passionate about youngsters and kids and developing the future stars of the world. And I've been very proud to be part of a great initiative in Hyderabad and Godium Sportopia, where we're looking to develop the next stars. And um, I've met amazing people in Hyderabad and Godium in the last 2 years, where we're trying to develop this amazing program. And yeah, I've been given this great honor, and I call it an honor to speak to all of you guys. I see there's a lot of guys on the Zoom talk today, and yeah, I'd just like to give you an insight of long-term athletic development and gymnastics, as we're going to be working with Manoj at the school. Yeah, and just try and chat and give you an idea of what is long-term athletic development. And just to give you a brief rundown of how I came about long-term athletic development and the center itself, is that a lot of coaches 10 years ago or so came to me around athletes that were injured, and the injury occurred months and years before. And it was purely down to education and educating myself, because I then started researching why these kids are getting injured at these stages. And I Googled quite a lot, and I researched quite a lot. And a name called Iswan Bali came about. And he's become someone I've looked up to. We don't know each other at all, but I've researched him, and I've researched stuff that he's done around long-term athletic development in Canada. He's got a PhD in long-term athletic development. He's written over 75 articles. He's taken long-term athletic development to many countries around the world, and it's interesting reads, and it's something that I've come to trust a lot in my years of developing the Wondrous Sports Medical Center, and also developing programs to work with Manoj and the various other sports that will be hosted at Godium. So that was just a little brief of how I came about the long-term athletic development, and I hope a lot of you guys start researching a lot more. I'm sure you know of it quite extensively, but I've read quite a lot recently, and I've put out a few slides. And we must know that all this work is based and researched from Iswan Bali from Canada. So I'm just using his information to impart that knowledge.
कनाडा के जो रिसर्चर हैं उनकी इंफॉर्मेशंस के आधार पे क्रैक आज हमें बताने जा रहे हैं लॉन्ग टर्म एथलीट डेवलपमेंट. Yes, Craig, please.
So yes, I'll continue the presentation on behalf of Godium Sportopia. and we will be dealing with long-term athletic development. That's myself. Oopsie.
Oops.
Technology.
You lost yourself.
Yes, technology.
It's okay,
Just
Greg.
when you want to start. Sorry, guys.
You can go with the slideshow.
Okay, that's basically a little rundown of myself. I have a master's in physiotherapy, and I graduated as an undergrad in 2004. Okay, Manoj and I have done quite a lot of work in the last couple of weeks, and we've imparted our knowledge around the sport. He's the man of gymnastics in India, and I come from a physiotherapy perspective. And let's take it from here that I am a physio, but I have read a lot about sports science and the development of athletes. But my scope of practice is physiotherapy and prehabilitation and rehabilitation. So so a lot of the information is a lot of reading and talking to a lot of sports scientists around the world and a lot of athletes to come up with a lot of the information. So as we know, gymnastics is one of the the most important sports uh, in the world, and gymnastics gives a child an immense amount of developmental skills, from movement, physical and motor abilities, mental abilities, social, because I mean it's all about being social at a young age and having fun. So kids need to learn about other kids and develop those social and emotional skills, and that with fun they begin to perform and roll around and jump around and become creative in movement. And hence why gymnastics is the perfect activity for the development of physical literacy. What's very important to me, and I'm sure a lot of people that are watching today, is that the success of any sport and gymnastics is a holistic approach. So just like gymnastics, and Iswan Bali says, the result of many years of extensive planning and preparation by coaches, clubs, parents, partners, medical staff. All these disciplines must work together for one reason, and that reason is the child and the athlete. And that's the real important part of long-term athletic development. We all here, I'm sure many of us know about 10,000 hour rule and what that takes. The early exposure of gymnastics activities should be one of the first steps of all children on the road to physical literacy. The optimal time for the development of physical literacy is during the first 10 years. And that's where we develop the 10,000 rule. Science and research says that if we work for 10 years and we work at 3 hours a day, we'll eventually get to 10,000 hours. And if, as you see on the presentation, the best expert, the best professionals eventually get there from that age to about 20, where 18 to 20, they become masters if they get to the 10,000 hour rule.
10,000 घंटे हमें काम करना है जिम्नास्टिक्स के पीछे, ये रिसर्च कहती है, तब जाके हम हमारी हाई परफॉर्मेंस पहुंच पाएंगे. 10,000 घंटे जब से आप एक्टिव और फंडामेंटल एक्टिव्स के बाद, जब आप स्पेसिफिक जिम्नास्टिक में इंटर करते हो, उसके बाद. Yes, correct.
Okay, so we're gonna then go to the best practices of long-term athletic development. Early entry, active start, and recreational programs should allow children to develop all developmental patterns. That's what we say. We start early, we get them having fun. Having fun is a critical aspect of getting children at a young age to enjoy their sport. A lot more coaches need to understand what long-term athletic development is about. And just like me, I started my own journey by by researching on my own. And the best way to learn is to do your own research. And like I said, I've chatted through my travels, and I've been blessed to travel throughout my career. When I get to other countries, I speak to other coaches, I speak to other strength and conditioning coaches, and I just try to understand what they're doing in terms of injury prevention, because basically that's what we want to do. As a physiotherapist, I want to prevent injuries. So my key performance indicator would be to set up programs with coaches, have that alignment. And I'll always go back to this little diagram here, that all of us need to work together in order to prevent to prevent injuries in a child, and also to get them with the coaches and the parents to the highest level possible through fun.
तो हमें यहाँ समझना होगा कि हम सब मिलके एक बच्चे के लिए काम कर रहे हैं, एथलीट के लिए काम कर रहे हैं, उसके लिए कोच, स्पोर्ट साइंस, सब कुछ मिलके हम एक साथ काम करेंगे, तब उसको हम आगे बढ़ा सकते हैं, उसको इंजरी से बचा के हम आगे लेके जा सकते हैं. जैसा कि इन्होंने बताया, एंट्री लेवल एक्टिव स्टार्ट एंड रिकग्निशनल प्रोग्राम शुड अलाउ. सो हमें जब बच्चे को 3 या 4 साल की एज में लेके आते हैं, तो हमें उसे एक्टिव स्टार्ट में रिक्रिएशनल फन मूवमेंट्स की तरफ लेके जाना है, फिजिकल लिटरेसी की तरफ लेके जाना है, रनिंग, टर्निंग, जंपिंग्स एंड ऑल. इस तरीके से आगे बढ़ाएंगे तो हम उसको जल्दी आगे लेके जा सकते हैं. Yes, correct.
Yeah, coaches should be trained to lead programs. So understanding the fundamentals of having fun and multi-directional, and incorporate many other aspects of gymnastics, which the gymnastics coaches will know on this talk. Coaches should incorporate flexibility. Flexibility is very important as children grow. Their bodies are growing, their muscles are growing. We need to make sure that we're keeping them supple. And we all know on this talk that flexibility is vitally important for gymnastics. Gymnastics is one of the most flexible sports around. And if we go around to other codes, flexibility can deteriorate over time if not done regularly. Coaches require thorough knowledge of the periods of acceleration of training, and they need to modify programs accordingly. And in Sportopia, Gaudium, that's where we're coming in as the medical staff, where we're going to work hand in hand. And we'll go back to that diagram again, where everyone is working together to communicate one word. And that's to develop the best possible athlete. Coaches, athletes, and parents require more knowledge and awareness of growth changes. I think that's very important. Everyone needs to understand the milestones of a child, and when they grow, when growth spurts occur, what do we do when a growth spurt happens, what happens with growing pains. I mean, there's a term called growing pains, where we know that kids develop pain on their knees, in the ankles, and those are yellow flags and red flags. You know, we need to stop and not force and seek advice.
यहाँ पे हमें मल्टी डायमेंशनल मूवमेंट में काम करना है. अगर हमें बच्चे को लेके आए हैं तो स्टार्टिंग में, अर्ली स्टार्ट में ये नहीं कि उसको जिम्नास्टिक्स मूवमेंट में ही डालना है. अर्ली उसको मल्टी डायमेंशनल मूवमेंट करानी है, रनिंग भी करानी है, जंपिंग भी करानी है, आपको गेम्स भी खिलाने हैं, फन वे में भी लेके आना है. और यहाँ पे जो इन्होंने फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी की बात की है, फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी हमारी वो तो है कि हम फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी कराते हैं. इन्होंने यहाँ पे फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी हमारी ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम में भी जिक्र किया है कि जो हमारा प्लान होगा वो फ्लेक्सिबल होगा, वो हमें बच्चे के अकॉर्डिंगली लेके जाना पड़ेगा. Yes, correct.
Young gymnasts must be trained by experienced coaches who understand all these principles. Calendar planning is vitally important, competitive schedules, and how we integrate all that into the programming of the child, where we look at regional, provincial, national, and school training. Everything needs to come together, and we all need to understand that we don't overload a child, because overloading can cause injuries and a child not to enjoy themselves. We must always remember the important role that we play in developing the whole child. And developing a child in sport is not just about the sport. It's about, again, the term I'll always bring across is holistic. Holistic means the mind as well. How do we make sure that we keep forcing the term fun and enjoyment, because if someone's enjoying something, they will want to come to practice, they will want to work extra, they do the extra sessions. Flexibility, which is not very strenuous, and as we get older, a lot of the professional and the elite athletes don't like flexibility because people, it's not strenuous enough, but flexibility is pertinent to any sport. We should ensure that gymnasts, again, they are saying in 11, a sense of fun and integration. The next slide deals with the factors that influence long-term athletic development. Fun, fundamentals, we all know about that. I'm sure many of us on this talk know about fundamentals. Biological versus chronological age, that's very important. Long-term athletic development is based on maturity of the body, not chronological age. So rapid to slow transit through puberty. We need to know when children go through puberty because that's an important growing phase. Some sports have made a decision that athletes not compete during the growth phase aspect, and are highly selective about the number of types of competitions. So during a growth spurt is a very important part of the development of an athlete. And men and girls and boys, girls will have a growth spurt sooner than boys do. I'm sure we know that. And there are two ages in a child's development. Again, holistic approach. I talk about the holistic approach all the time. Iswan Bali also talks about it. We at the Wanderers Sports Medical Center, and we'll be introducing that at Godium, that everything about an athlete is about the holistic approach. No one knows everything. It's impossible that one person knows about the mind, about the body, about the physical movements, about the skill. Someone around there has more knowledge than you do. These little kids enjoying the fundamentals of stretching. Other factors, specialization. Every child should be introduced to gymnastics before the age of 10. I'm sure that's happening already. Talent identification is key. So that's around 10. That's where we're looking to identify some talent. Trainability is the responsiveness of the individuals of training stimulus at different stages, growth, maturation, etc. As you see there, LTAD identifies several qualities of training and performance. That's endurance, that's strength, that's speed, that's flexibility, that's skill, all those important aspects. Periodization is one of the most important things that Iswan Wali talks about. He's a sports scientist and he's a periodization expert. So a lot of the information through long-term athletic development is how do we periodize our programs. It's about sitting down with everyone and literally taking many days to plot and plan the future of your athletes. It's about knowing when your preseason is, when your in-season is, how do we recover, when do we recover, what competitions there are, what regional competitions. It's about putting everything on this calendar and plotting and planning, and then as you go on and as you see that it then involves the development of the child. When do they grow? How do they grow? Do they grow slower than the other, etc., etc. Everything's got to be individualized, and that's our take-home message eventually when we get there, that every child is different. Every child thinks differently, grows differently. Like all of us on this talk, there's 312 people I see on this talk, and all of us think differently. So we need to adapt to that. Again, the 10-year rule, that's a 10,000 hour rule, like we spoke about earlier. System alignment and integration, that's with physical education at school. And that's one of the big drivers at Godium. We are gonna look to get the educators, the coaches, very, very involved, because the educators are critically important, because in every school you have PT, which is a subject, and educators take on PT, not necessarily your big coaches like in your different disciplines. And there needs to be extreme synergy between the two, because we want to educate the educators on how to understand talent and then push them on to the coaches so we can develop the talent. Because somewhere in that class, you're going to find an introvert that's sitting in the front of the class, because sometimes everyone thinks someone sitting at the front of the class is an academic, but he or she could be a great sportsman, but we don't know that if we don't test that. So that's where we're looking to get that integration. Continuous improvement, and then focus on one philosophy. And our philosophy is the child is the most important. And how do we make the child at a young age have fun, enjoy their sport, enjoy general type aspects of life. And then we get to the 7 stages of long-term athletic development. If many of you have read about it, we all know there's 7 important stages. And as we go around, we see the 7 stages. The one is active start. Second is fundamental. Third is learning to train. Fourth is training to train. Fifth is training to compete. Sixth is training to compete. That's the heat of the battle. And then 7th is learning to win. Okay, a bit of more information on each stage here. Here you'll see the ages and a little description. So active start, what ages it occurs at, and then I've got some notes on the side. Parent education is very important. I always talk about the Andre Agassi episode. I read, all of us should read his autobiography. It's a great autobiography. Andre Agassi, a great American tennis player from the United States that has many, many records. He states in his book that his dad was pretty hard on him and forced him to do stuff. And if a parent forces the issue, the child is going to begin to dislike the sport. And that's what we want to try and avoid. And that's where the parent education needs to come in. Nutrition, the importance of daily physical activity, and 60 minutes of daily activity normally happens. And we want kids to enjoy it. It's not hard-on coaching. You must do this, you must do that type of thing. And we want to try and avoid technology. This is the age of technology. And I'm sure with Sportopia, that's one of the big things they want to integrate into programs. Stage 2 is fundamentals. Those are the ages again. Here we begin teaching agility, balance, coordination, and speed. That's your ABCs. To continue to instill the importance of daily play, fundamentals is critical here. In physiotherapy, we can start looking at screening the child and just looking at little areas where we can improve by just doing some basic objective screenings. Stretching classes are very important. Motor skills, R means running, J means jumping, T means throwing, W means wheeling, etc. Structured gymnastics and swimming programs. Like we said, gymnastics is key for physical literacy for the youth. And a lot of reading says how important gymnastics is and how important you guys are for kids that are here at this time. Introduction to rules. We can start introducing rules, but not be too harsh, because it's still about fun. 10 hours per week, 1 to 2 hours of hand-drill skills, and periodization starts becoming important. Stage 3, a lot more notes, which means a lot more to learn about, because this is where a lot of development starts. So we got to be on our toes and, being more vigilant to a lot of things that happen to children. Continue your ABCs to begin to integrate physical and mental, cognitive and emotional components, to further develop physical literacy. Growth spurts can start developing depending on the genetics of the child. Again, every person is not the same. So you're going to have many different kids in a class developing at different stages, but it's around this time where a growth spurt could happen. Again, introduce testing and monitoring, where we become more prevalent in terms of medical staff to start assessing. Stretching again is important. Sessions become more supervised, and it shouldn't be a lot of students. Biomechanics is vitally important. So I'm well trained in biomechanics, and I'm extremely finicky about alignment and biomechanics at around this age builds the athlete to when they're much older. So very important part about watching and observing and being supervised during this stage. Speed development, aerobic development, introduction to warm-ups and cool-downs, and making sure that they start understanding why these aspects are so important. And again, your hours of training increase, and talent identification begins. Stage 4, we start developing endurance, strength, and speed, and skills. Again, this is the most challenging and critical stage. And as I said, growth spurts can differ, but again, this should be a big aspect, this phase where the growth spurt is at its peak. And we use the term peak height velocity, which is extremely important. And we need to start with the medical guys, we need to start plotting things on graphs and understanding what ages kids are developing and peaking, because bones start to grow first and put a lot more pressure on connective tissue. Supervision is critical, monitoring again, because you're growing so rapidly, you know. From a sports science and a medical point of view, your anthropometry measurements are quite important. Regular monitoring of your peak height velocity, like I mentioned, speed development. As we go down, we could develop formal weight training could start. As we training hours increase, number of sessions increase, etc., as in the slide. Stage 5, learning to compete. That's the ages. To develop event-specific area physical preparation, to introduce event-specific protocols, to identify weakness and strengths, and to integrate physical, mental, and cognitive approaches. That's very important. I mean, as we go on in life, a lot more things develop, so does our mind, and our mind starts playing games with ourselves because we're beginning to compete and we want to win. And there's a big divide between understanding that we may not win all the time, and the emotions and stresses around that, and emotional and stresses that a coach may put on a child, a parent may put on a child, well, an adolescent at this stage, and you know, developing the mind aspect and how do we control that. So single and double periodization is used, sessions, number of sessions per week increase, practices increase, length of sessions, the concept of a performance enhancement team. And that's where now we become more critical. The psychologists become more critical, the nutritionists become more critical, because we are growing rapidly. Stage 6, again, we're getting older and older here. To optimize event preparation, to refine event areas, a whole lot of other stuff that's involved during this stage. All types of periodization happens. competition and mental preparation. As you see, mental preparation again is vitally important, and critical that performance enhancement team is integrated. We at this stage we are a lot more involved, and as you get older and older, you can work harder with SNCs, you can work harder and harder with sports scientists. Physios have a lot of injury prevention programs at these times, and all this is integrated with the coach, because the coach is the most important person in this whole situation, because he controls the emotions of the child, and at an elite level, we medical staff need to start understanding what the coach needs, and that's the drive. We are here to give information, but the coach drives the philosophy of his students. And lifestyle education is strictly directed to athletes. Stage 7 is learning to win, and this is now at extreme high performance, and we do know that the ages of gymnasts are much lower than a lot more sports, but we are probably peaking around these times, and we need to optimize performance. So, but due to the with the maturation age of athletes, this is where they mature the most, you know. So all testing and monitoring are in place, critical for the team again, and the athlete is learning to be a full-time athlete and a professional. So the integration occurs there. Manoj, do you want to say anything further?
Yes,
or should I continue?
yes, correct. You can go ahead. It's going good.
Okay. Okay. So this is where the sports medicine and the sports science comes into play. And this is where a lot of our education comes into play with the coaches, and how we need to develop relationships with coaches, and coaches need to develop relationships with us. Everything's about communication in life. We all know that communication is key to development in every sphere of life, may it be business, our own relationships at home, and the best ecosystems thrive around communication. So I'm gonna reiterate the fact that as medical staff, we have our knowledge around the science, the sports science, and the medical aspects of it, and why we need to monitor certain things. And that's information we provide to the coaches, and the coaches need to understand that there is some validation around that, and that because there's a lot more, there's a hell of a lot of research actually, and Iswan Bali alone has written numerous books around it, and that's how we look after our athletes. So in the role of monitoring, this is where I say sports scientists and physios and medical people take control, and these are the 13 areas on how to monitor growth. We're going to touch on a few aspects. So kinetometry is an application of the measurement of the body size, portion, and maturation. This provides a clear structural status of the athlete at any time. So this is where we use calipers. This is when we measure areas of body fat and stuff like that. So longitudinal velocity curves must be done. So the scientists and the sports scientists will begin drawing curves and putting patterns together and looking at all that stuff. A child with the chronological age of 12 years old may possess the biological age of between 9 and 15. So not everyone grows the same. And like I mentioned before, chronological versus biological is very important. When a coach considers a training competition or recovery program for any athlete, the age of the athlete must be considered. Very important. This is not done by simply checking the date of birth, also extremely important. There is a number of ages which must be considered, including chronological age, your developmental age, your skeletal, your general training age, your specific training age, and your relative age. So there's a lot of different aspects that to delve into. That's why there's scopes of practice, and that's what we do at the Wanderers Medical Center. Everyone has their own scope of practice. Everyone is good at what they do. A physiotherapist doesn't do what a sports scientist does. A sports scientist doesn't do what a psychologist does. In the same way, we are not coaches, and we're not there to coach the athlete, but we're there to give enough medical information as possible. And then we need to understand the growth measurements needed. Every child goes through a growing phase. So we need to understand that and monitor that, and understand that males and females go through puberty, and we need to document all that stuff. We need to have all that in place. And this is what your medical team will do. I spoke about peak height velocity, and then we've got a few graphs, and like I said, girls and boys mature differently, and their peak height velocity is different. Like, as you see, a girl will have their peak height velocity at an earlier age than a boy does. Like in the graph above, you'll see at 12, the girl has theirs, and around 13 and a half to 14, the boys do. Again, all those are important, and we need to observe and be vigilant around those aspects. This is one of the things or pictures I spoke about. These three boys are in the same team and are under 12, but they all grow differently, and we all need to understand this. And we all need to understand that the shortest kid there may have a different training program to the tallest, because the tallest may be more prone to injury and may actually, if pushed too hard, could not enjoy their sport and could stop playing sport due to injury. And we need to be observant of that and trust the knowledge that your medical staff has. Trainability is another very important aspect, and windows of trainability refer to periods of accelerated adaptation to training during the sensitive periods of pre-puberty, puberty, and early post-puberty. The window is fully open during the sensitive periods of accelerated adaptation to training, and partially open outside that. So we need to understand that we can't push someone extremely hard during a peak height velocity and during the growth spurt, because you may injure them, but you should never stop completely. There are 6 phases of growth. First phase is the chronological age between 0 and 6. Phase 2, age 6 to the onset of growth. And as you see there, stage 3 from onset of growth to your growth spurt, and peak height velocity, from peak height velocity to slow deceleration, from slow deceleration to growth, to the growth aspect, and then when you actually stop growing in stage 6. These are how we measure. Measurements of height can be done must be done in standing, in sitting, and then your arm span. I think this is a very important tool to have in your offices. If you don't have the luxury of having medical staff around you and sports scientists and trainers, etc., just by having a little measuring tool allows you to plot and plan the growth of your child, and understanding critical ages where these kids are going to grow. As you see from research, we understand that during certain ages, the child will grow. So then we take more onus on taking measurements during these times. And then there's the recommended time to measure. Measurements are made once quarterly. Measurements are made as close as possible to the same date in the month. Part of the training session be set aside for measurements. Measurements are taken at a day of rest. Measurements are taken after a day of rest. Measurements are taken at the beginning of a training session. So again, routines are important. Doing things like this in a structured manner then goes again to how we structure programs. Sport and how we work is, all researchers, I'm a researcher, so I'm very thorough in plotting down things and recording measurements and doing graphs. So that's our job. And if you would like, and I think most of the coaches need to try and do that in terms of measurement. If you don't have the staff available, that you look at creating routines around measurements and structured programs. This is a funny little slide I have. I hope none of you coaches are like this guy here. Shouting may not get the best out of the development of your child. And this is the one slide we spoke about yesterday. There's a staff member from Godium and myself had a good laugh about it. And it's something we must always remember. They are kids and it's a game, and we need to understand that enjoyment is key to developing children. This is a little bird's eye view of where we're going to be working. This is going to be a fantastic little, well, I use little, it's not little, a fantastic school in Hyderabad where there's going to be 27 Olympic codes. Gymnastics is one of them. And we're going to look to create high performance and develop structures and develop protocols and create screening and integrate a holistic approach with educators, with coaches, with general staff members, all understanding the philosophy of the school and all understanding that the child is the most important person in the school. This is a little demo of the gymnastics area. And thank you everyone for your time. I hope I added some information to you.
Yes, in small time you give a lot of information to us. So I just give a little brief in Hindi, Craig.
Yes.
Before, so यहाँ पे जो बात की है क्रेग ने हमें 7 स्टेजेस बताए हैं कि 7 स्टेजेस में जो हमारे हैं एक्टिव स्टार्ट, फंडामेंटल, ट्रेनिंग टू ट्रेन. जो कल हम एक साइकोलॉजिस्ट से बात कर रहे थे कि हमें हमेशा जीतना ही क्यों होता है, तो जीतने के लिए भी हमारा वहाँ एक फेज बनाया होता है जब हम कंपटीशन में जाते हैं, ट्रेनिंग टू कंपटीशन टू लर्न. सो उन सब फेजेस के थ्रू यहाँ बताने की कोशिश की गई है और बताया गया है कि ग्रोथ, जब ग्रोथ पीरियड होता है, ग्रोथ पीरियड में हमें किस तरीके से हमारा ट्रेनिंग प्लान डिजाइन करना चाहिए. और हमारे जो ट्रेनिंग प्लान में हमेशा फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी होनी चाहिए. अगर हमें प्लान बनाना है और हमारा ए प्लान काम नहीं कर रहा है तो हम प्लान बी की तरफ जाएंगे और वो प्लान हमारा एज के अकॉर्डिंगली जाएगा. और एज भी डेट ऑफ बर्थ के अकॉर्डिंग नहीं जाएगा, वो बच्चे की कंडीशंस देख के हम अपने प्रोग्राम सेट करेंगे, तो हम इजीली अपने बच्चे को हाई परफॉर्मेंस तक ले जा सकते हैं विदाउट एनी इंजुरी. तो ये हमारे लॉन्ग टर्म्स के सभी थे एस्पेक्ट जो इन्होंने बताए. सो नाउ क्रेग वी हैव सम क्वेश्चंस फ्रॉम ऑडियंस. सो
ओके,
कैन यू जस्ट प्लीज स्टॉप योर शेयरिंग, देन आई कैन आस्क यू.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, so the question is from
Nice
like
to see you again.
Yeah, okay, the first question is, if competition start at the age of 8 years, then what
Yes.
age children start gymnastics?
So if it starts at 8, I mean,
if the competition start at 8, I know
yes,
not everywhere, but question is question.
yeah, everywhere is different, and every structure is different, but it's still important to understand the milestones of the child and what the child is going through at that stage, and to understand that if you push too hard, the child could get injured. So yeah, we generally looking to start the child playing around 2 to 3, you know, when they're starting to roll around and jump around and stuff. So from 2 to 6, I would say.
So, and the next question is, which of important anthropometric measurement would you suggest at the time initial selection of a child at the age of 6, boys and girls in gymnastics?
So again, the fundamentals of that is the 7 skin fold rule. So you'll sum of 7. So you'll start looking at that and, you know, looking at those areas.
So these questions I got from the audience, not more. I think I'll just looking maybe. If anybody have any more questions, Can you please write what is the proper age to start weight training to male and female gymnasts?
So as we went back on the slides, you'll see that around the ages of at between 10 and 10, we're going to just use dolls and we're going to just use form. Form is very important. Weight training, supervised weight training can start around 12 years old, depending on the growth of the child. I mean, again, growth spurts are vitally important. And there's an old wives' tale that weight training is not good. Weight training is actually very important for children, but supervised weight training and not doing too heavy, because it actually improves bone density, and bone density helps the development of the child. So around 12 years old, I would say. But again, everyone's different, and we need to be cognizant. We can't say everyone's doing weight training at the age of 12. You need to plot and plan. Everything's about planning.
Yes, Craig. And the question, how to keep up the intrinsic motivational level of the gymnast for 10 years and above?
How to repeat?
Okay. How to keep up the intrinsic motivational level of gymnast for 10 years?
How to keep them motivated?
Yes, continuous 10 years.
Yes. For 10 years.
Yes.
Again, how many do we have? 300 people on the stock. Everyone is individual. That's the beauty of humanity, is that that's how you're going to develop your own coaching style. If you want to develop great athletes, you got to develop a philosophy of motivation and how you motivate people, and how you a textbook is a textbook. We can go here till the whole night and tell you a list on what to do, but we got to develop our own motivational skills to motivate people, I think. That's my personal opinion.
Okay. And the next, can the term skeletal age and relative age in gymnastics be explained in brief?
Skeletal age?
Yeah, skeletal age and relative age. What are the different?
So skeletal age means your skeleton, how your body is growing. So that's the biological aspect of your growth. And the relative age as well is being relative. It's explaining to you your relative, how are you now? How are you growing at this moment?
Okay, and the question is, Craig, if a child starts gymnastics after 10 years, what will be the consequences?
Consequences?
Yes. If the child start at the age of 10.
There's not going to be much consequences, but you can still develop a superstar at that age, because it needs to be unearthed. But I mean, if we're going along the LTAD principles, we still need to understand that at that age, this is where they're developing. So doesn't mean you're starting later. You start from the active start, for instance. You don't necessarily have to start at active start.
Craig, some questions, but all the competitions are based upon chronological age only. Then how to proceed? One question from audience.
Hey?
And the people are asking, the competitions are based upon chronological age.
Yes.
Then how to proceed training?
So everything's based on chronological age. We have under 10, under 12, all that stuff. That's exactly what we're saying. But the development of the child is different. For everyone is different. So we need to be flexible in what we're doing and how we're understanding the child. So we need to understand the development of the child at that stage.
Thank you, Craig. One more questions I want to ask that came from our senior coach. But for this, we have to go to your slide at the fundamental stage. Can you please on your screen and go to the fundamental stage again? Because I cannot read that questions. I will show you.
Okay.
Craig. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, Craig, I have one question. You have mentioned 10,000 hours. Rather, it is an active training hour or it is a total hours? Means if one gymnast go to gym and have sit there, warm up there and have a discussion, you added all things or only on apparatus, actual training?
I would say it's actual training, because you're trying to develop a skill. So I was actually speaking to a lot of people. I was just speaking to my friends in my neighborhood yesterday, and we were talking about the Tiger Woods, the golfer, for instance. Tiger Woods is known for training excessively and playing a certain iron, hitting a certain iron a number of times. He's the epitome of the 10,000 hour rule in terms of doing the work or hitting the club, the 5 iron, that amount of time. So yes, it's the actual work. It's the actual physical work.
So one slide, yes, in this slide, Craig, in the fundamental.
Yes.
Yes. You write fundamental motor skills dash R J T W T K T C. The questions from our senior coach. What is the meaning of that word?
So it's a mnemonic. So it's running, jumping, throwing, wheeling,
turning, kicking, throwing, and kicking again.
Catching.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the abbreviations. Thank you very much, Craig.
Thank you.
तो इन द लास्ट मैं आपको बताना चाहूंगा कि क्रैग काफी हमारे हेड फिजियोथेरेपिस्ट साउथ अफ्रीकन टीम के लॉन्ग टर्म्स के ऊपर इन्होंने काफी काम किया था, और मैं इनसे मिला था गार्डियन स्पोर्टोपिया हैदराबाद में. वहां पे ये एज ए टीम काम कर रहे हैं. सो वहां पे मैंने इनका थॉट सुना था और उसको मैं यहाँ लेके आने की कोशिश की है आज जिम्नास्टिक्स में. सो होपफुली ये हम सबको हेल्प करेगा. सो क्रैग, थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर योर sparing time.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time and everyone coming on board. I hope I gave some good information. I'm not perfect as well, so we're all learning, and I definitely think everyone still learns every day, and there's new questions asked every day. So I'll take every question on board to make sure that my answers were good and my information and slides will keep evolving.
Thank you, Craig. On the behalf of Sports Authority of India, I thank you again, Craig, for sparing your time. So hope to see you soon again.
I was very nervous. I didn't sleep much last night. So I hope I spoke okay.
We all coaches, Craig, and it's just a discussion.
Yeah.
A discussion.
Yeah. No, I still get nervous. I got a lot of water next to me, so my mouth is very dry. So I hope we all work together to develop the next stars.
No, it's good, nice thoughts, because we have to understand the terminology of LTAD and talent identification and periodizations. Then we have to differentiate everything. So we have to connect everything. We are here for the kids. We are here for the athletes. So we are working together.
Very important. I think it's very important that we research ourselves and be responsible for our own actions.
And Craig, I am so lucky that I am working with you people, and it's good for me.
No problem.
तो कुछ कल हमारा जो सेशन होगा आंद्रे के साथ होगा, स्टिल रिंग. हम आगे करेंगे, हमारी टेक्निकल ट्रेनिंग्स में आगे बढ़ेंगे. उससे पहले मैं ये जो आज हमने बताया है सब कुछ, टैलेंट आइडेंटिफिकेशन, ये जितना भी हम टेक्निकल ट्रेनिंग सीख लेंगे, जितनी भी नॉलेज गेन कर लेंगे, बट विदाउट सिस्टम हम कुछ भी नहीं कर पाएंगे. सो हमें सबसे पहले ये सिस्टम डेवलप करने पड़ेंगे, तब जाके हम कुछ आगे कर पाएंगे. मैंने देखा ऐसे काफी सेंटर्स है जहाँ पे हम ये चीज अप्लाई कर सकते हैं, जहाँ पे जिस भी सेंटर में बच्चे 5-4 साल से इंटर होते हैं और वहां पे हाई एज तक जाके काम चलता है, तो वहां पे हम इस सिस्टम को डेवलप कर सकते हैं, जो कि मैंने देखा है, जिनका जिक्र बार बार क्रैग ने किया है, क्योंकि ये भी काफी